was talking to some friends of mine the other day, and it was the weirdest thing. We're always talking about Black history and being Black pride and all that kind of stuff. But it was funny. I was drinking a cup of coffee, and a friend of mine said, "Hey, what's that in that cup?" And I said, I made a joke. I said, "Oh, it's my own special home brew coffee, whatever." And he said something that baffled me. He said, "Yeah, when I was growing up, my mama told us we couldn't drink coffee because it'll make you Black." And I said, "Huh?" And then somebody else chimed in and said, "Yeah, my mama told me the same thing. We were growing up and we couldn't make coffee. We couldn't drink coffee because it'd make you Black." And then there was another person in the meet who wasn't from Texas. And they said, "Did your mama tell you the same thing?" And this person wasn't from Texas. I think she's from Detroit. She said, "No, we were always taught to be Black and proud." So I said, "You know what? When I talk to Kai, I'm gonna ask him. Do you remember those kind of things growing up, and do you think that kind of set us up to be, I don't know, proud of being Black? Or, I mean, what's your take on that whole conversation?"
That's funny that the difference between Detroit and Texas, or Michigan and Texas, they were taught to be Black and proud, and we heard things that were negative about being Black. Now, I don't remember hearing the coffee thing, but I absolutely remember people saying stuff like, "Don't stay outside in the sun too long because you." In other words, what you don't want to be is Black.
What's that? Break it down. What James Evans say? What James Evans say on Good Times? Break that down. What he say?
Florida, face it, Florida. If you was making a list of things that people don't want to be, poor is right at the bottom of the list, right up sick and dead.
I see. That's James, sick and dead.
Remember, when we were younger, I was even more lighter skinned than I am now.
Yeah.
And people would say all the time, you've been out, you're getting darker, you're going outside in the sun, you're getting darker. And it's like, this negative thing. And then, of course, as we started reading Black history, particularly Malcolm, in the very beginning of our studies, we learned about how words in the language were used to negate the whole thing about devil's food cake and angel food's cake. You know what I'm saying? And remember in the movie with Malcolm, even in the book, there was a whole part about how he did all this compare and contrast between you're going to be pure as the driven white snow and all of these kinds of whole scene in the Malcolm. And it was in the book too, where he gave multiple examples of how they use language. You've been blackballed, all of these kinds of things to point to Black is something that you do not want to be. Well, of course, as we continue to read history and study, it's the thing to be.
So you think, and we're kind of sticking on to our childhood and all that stuff. You remember this? I don't know if you're gonna own up to it, but I'm gonna throw it out there for the whole world to hear.
I know what you're gonna say about the culture.
Okay, well, I'm gonna say it anyway, so you know where I'm going. When we were coming out of high school. We came out the same year. I was an athlete. You were an academician. I think I'm saying that right. I went to an HBCU. Didn't know it was an HBCU, but I went to one. You could have gone to any HBCU you wanted to go to, but something in your head said, "I don't want to go to college with Black people." What up with that?
Thing, bro. It's the same thing. You don't want Black skin. You don't want to be around Black people. You don't want to walk on Black asphalt. You don't want to eat Black pepper.
Right. That's right.
If it's Black, it's whack. And it's funny you bring that up because, we had very little knowledge about how to pursue college and those things. I just applied to schools. And like you said, you went to an HBCU in Austin. You didn't even know it was an HBCU. Right. By the same time, I was being recruited by HBCUs. I remember some of the school names, and I remember thinking to myself, man, I'm not going to no raggedy ass HBC. The impression that we had, and some of the schools were like, I remember Oberlin College sent me a letter.
Fisk, Morehouse sent you one.
Morehouse sent me a letter, but I was also being recruited by the white schools. And when we grew up, you got to think about this. This was our mindset before we got turned on to the truth. You can call it Black history all you want to. It's the truth. We can call it the truth. When we got turned to, then we started to realize that we had been conditioned against HBCUs. That's kind of
Right.
happening in research now. Let me tell you a quick story about that. So because there's all this pride in HBCUs, my daughter was at an event recently, last weekend, and it had something to do with it had something to do with Howard here. I think it was people who went to Howard who were from the Seattle area, and they came back and they were on a panel, and Keisha was participating in it. And while she was there, an older white person, when I mean elderly, I mean an adult, walked over to her and said something like, "Are white people allowed to go to HBCUs?" Now that question is sort of a loaded question to a 17-year-old. I said, ooh, woo, 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 woo. He lucky daddy wasn't there. But he we're excluding white people, that kind of thing, and put Keith on the spot. But that's an indication of that this idea has been turned around. We were coming up, it was all negative. Our children are gravitating toward HBCUs. White folks didn't want to go to HBCUs back in the day. So why are you
Oh no.
asking that? It's the latest fad.
So we have children roughly the same age, and my daughter. I'm encouraging her. She's really looking at the service academies, but she's also looking at HBCU. She's looking at Prairie View. But like I told you, and do you think this is a fair thing to do? One of the things that I tell, even when I was a high school principal, that I would tell students, you kind of have to go where they're offering you the most money. So do you think that taking less money but going to an HBCU is admirable, or should you just, if Princeton is offering you more money than Howard, I mean, you gotta go where the money is. Is that a fair assessment? Or is that a fair reason for bypassing an HBCU and going to a PWI, even though you really, really want to go to this HBCU, but Princeton's offering you more money?
I mean, I think it depends on your circumstances, your financial circumstances. So if you can pay for your child to go to an HBCU, even though I didn't go to an HBCU, but I think that would be the thing to do. I was at an alumni barbecue over the summer here in Seattle, and it was alumni who graduated from Trinity University in San Antonio here in Seattle now. And while I was there, I met this lady whose granddaughter was attending, and she is going to be she's a freshman right now at Trinity. And she told me that, yeah, my grandbaby also got admitted to Howard. Now, I never attended Howard, but I attended Trinity. So I know what that experience, a Black student on that campus, it wasn't fun, right? And I said, why in the world would she choose Trinity University over Howard? And it was to your point, she said Trinity gave her more money. So if money is an issue, then I would say go to, because ultimately you want to get the education. Yes, But if your daughter is also admitted to an HBCU, like Keisha got admitted to Spelman and Howard, she's basically gonna choose between those two. I don't know if I can afford that or not.
Is that something that, as a parent, is that something that you're looking at? Okay, I just got to make it happen. I got to get an extra job. I got to do what I got to do to make this happen because I want my child to go to an HBCU.
Yeah, she got scholarships, but they're not full ride. Now she did get full ride to a couple HBCUs, just not Spelman and Howard. And if that's what she decides to do, yeah, I'm gonna make it happen, because I'm coming from the standpoint, and so are you. Your book, Inner City Public Schools Still Work. Go out and get you a copy of that, especially if you're in education. You wrote about the hardships. Now you wrote about it mostly from the financial standpoint. You could write a whole other book from the standpoint of the racial standpoint.
Right.
For me, there is no way in hell I would tell a Black kid go to a college that is predominantly white. PWI is one thing. Trinity was 1% minority. So adding to the pressure of studying, what I told my daughter was, you want to go into an environment that's welcoming. You want to go into an environment that's extra mile to help you thrive, not just put you out there and hope you can swim, right? They're going to collar you. They're going to help you cultivate your pride, your confidence, all these things which students need. That's when you're at your most vulnerable. You don't want to be in college worrying about other factors while you're trying to learn and study. So that's why and that's what I had to go through. I was trying to deal with all kind of other stuff, including the fact that I was one of 5 black people on campus and trying to study, that just makes it more difficult. So I think going to an HBCU gives you the best chance to succeed. And college is more studies. Just there's a social aspect to college. And that's something that you and I never even experienced. That's why I don't have an allegiance to a college football team, or I don't have any feelings of pride about graduating from Trinity. I don't go back to the reunions. All these things are like one of our friends, his grandlaw, right? She's big time at PV. Their alumni thing. Man, that stuff, we missed out on that. You know what I mean? And I know people that went to those schools. I have a cousin that graduated from Howard. My niece Terry, her daughter recently graduated from Howard. Keisha has friends at all the HBCU, so she in Hampton. She has a friend in Hampton right now that grew up in Austin. Absolutely think that if you could do that financially, that's the way to go.
Yeah. So you think, last part, we got a couple of seconds. So you think that encouraging our children, black children, to attend an HBCU, and if you can find any kind of way to afford it, you think that that's a better option, or a better option than going to a PWI for whatever other reason. But if you can make it happen, then HBCU is the way to go.
Absolutely, because you're going to get the education. You know what I mean? It goes back to, don't go outside, you might get black, don't blame black coffee. Do you think that a PWI is in Hampton? I don't. I don't. And if I can get an education that's comparable, why not get it while enjoying my culture, thriving in my culture? You know what I mean? Listening to my music, eating the kind of food from our culture, talking amongst our culture. When I go somewhere, Keisha has grown up here in the Seattle area, where she's the only black girl almost everywhere she goes, in every class for sure. And so that's over with, bruh.